Welcome back to the Brahmin Word, and we are wrapping up the life of Saul today. And it has been just this really interesting look at bitterness and jealousy, and but he did some good things here and there too. But it was just this really just roller coaster of a ride. And today we are going to look at the end of that ride. So turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 31, or the last chapter in the book of 1 Samuel. We're going to look at the whole entire chapter. But for some context, this is the fight that is now here with the Philistines that we talked about last time in 1 Samuel chapter 28 with the medium or the witch at Endor. But now we are going to see that battle and see what happens. And as Samuel said in chapter 28, Saul and his sons are not going to live this out. And so we will take a look at that here. So 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 1. Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchi-shua, the sons of Saul. The battle pressed hard against Saul, and the archers found him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and mistreat me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he feared greatly. Therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell upon his sword and died with him. Thus Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer, and all his men on the same day together. And when the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley, and those beyond the Jordan River, saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their cities and fled, and the Philistines came and lived in them. So you have this battle. It's gone extremely badly from the get-go in verse 1. And then it focuses specifically on Saul and his sons. So you have Jonathan, again, the heir apparent. Of course, he has already turned that over to Jonathan. Has already realized that David's going to be the next king. But Jonathan, just this really loves the Lord, obeys him, but then also has this great friendship with David. What a beautiful life he lived. And sadly, it comes to a very sad end, with him falling by the sword, being struck down, and before his father was struck down as well. And so for Saul, there's all this jealousy and all this fear comes together when he is badly wounded by archers. Now, some have said, okay, if he's just wounded, he'll survive that. Well, when it says badly wounded, you're supposed to be thinking about a fatal wound, where it hit him, which we are not told where exactly it hit him, but wherever the arrow hit, or maybe multiple arrows, but wherever the arrow or arrows hit, those were fatal wounds. Those were not, oh, like it's a bad wound, but you'll survive it. No, it's a fatal wound. You're kind of thinking, if you love fantasy, the Lord of the Rings, if you're thinking about Boromir, the character of Boromir, as he's trying to protect Pippin and Merry, the hobbits, and he's hit with arrows multiple times. Those arrows are not just arrows that you can recover from, those were fatal wounds, but yeah, he still kept fighting. And eventually he did die in the arms of Aragorn. Well, here we see that's kind of the same case. Saul doesn't die right away, but they are not just bad wounds, they are fatal wounds. And so that gives a little more context to why he is asking for his armor bearer to kill him in verse 4, which is what he does. And a lot of people will say, okay, why would he do this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The one reason he gave, that Saul gave, was because he did not want to be killed, or he did not want to be slain by the sword of the Philistines, which he had fought so hard against in the past. But he also believed that they would mistreat his body, which they did, which we'll see in a second. But so he is correct to think that way. I think for me, though, it's the culmination of the bitterness and the fear and the jealousy and the anger that he's had over really a big part of his life just coming all together. Seeing the death of the heir apparent in Jonathan, seeing the death of other of his sons, seeing the death of many of his soldiers, which actually we're told that it is all of his men in verse 6. You see all of those men die, and it's despair. And so despair finally settles in on Saul, and so he decides that's the best way out. His armor bearer doesn't do what what Saul is asked, not because the armor bearer isn't disobedience, because he values the king. The armor bearer again is there not just to carry armor, but to protect. And so for him to ask to be killed by this armor bearer, for the armor bearer not wanting to do that, makes a lot of sense, actually. And two, it's the king as well. So there could be big ramifications if the armor bearer lives, that you have killed the king. So that's a treasonous act. Even if you say the king has asked me to do it, there wouldn't be any witnesses to that. And so it makes sense why the armor bearer does not obey this command from Saul. And so Saul takes upon himself and ends his despair. ends his despair by falling on his own sword, which then when the armor bearer sees that, I think there's guilt that comes in with that, and he sees everybody else is dead as well, and so he also falls on his own sword. And so it's just a very sad end to the life of Saul, but it actually gets a little bit more sad. Verse 8. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. So they cut off his head. His, I believe here, is specifically talking about Saul, and stripped off his armor and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to the house of their idols and to the people. They put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth. Sorry about the phone there. They put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beth-shan. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh-gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Beth-shan, and they came to Jabesh and burned them there. And they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh and fasted 7 days. So not only has Saul died and they've lost this battle on Mount Gilboa, but now their bodies actually do get mistreated. One, they cut off Saul's head, and then they strip him of his armor, which is a very big symbolism of defeat. And humiliation for a warrior, and then sent messengers throughout the land saying, hey, Saul's dead, and we won this great victory against Israel. then not only that, but then they put his armor in the temple of their foreign god, Ashtaroth. And then they fastened his body to the wall. I mean, basically, it is just, which would have been headless. So basically, it's just this message that we have won and Saul has lost and Israel has lost. It's this massive, just presentation of humiliation, basically. And then with the armor being in the temple as well, it's a statement of not only do we have uh, physical militaristic victory, but now we are basically saying we have spiritual victory because we are putting the armor of a king into our God's temple. So that is why they put that armor in the temple of Ashtaroth. But thankfully, you have Israelites in Jabesh-gilead that and they're called valiant men, which they were for sure. They basically went on a mission that was very, very dangerous. But they took the bodies of Saul and the bodies of the sons of Saul and they cremated them instead. And then they gave the bones an actual funeral and then fasted 7 days. That fasting of 7 days would have been very, very common in that time to fast that long for a funeral. And again, it's not just not eating for a specific amount of time, but you're spending that time to focus on the Lord, and so that's where we see that. And when it comes to David, it's really interesting. In 2 Samuel chapter 1, he is extremely saddened by the news of the deaths of Saul and his sons. But not only that, but he then writes a lament for them, which is very, very beautiful. Check out 2 Samuel chapter 1, verses 17 through 27, or the end of chapter 1. But it is extremely beautiful, and it's just this great note of honor and respect from David to Saul, even though it didn't really make a ton of sense to give that to him because Saul pursued him. But with Saul, it's just this roller coaster of fear and jealousy and hatred towards one guy mostly, but then it ends with despair, with humiliation. And so, what does that tell us as believers? Um, we've already said this before, but don't give in to jealousy and to bitterness because then that just grows and festers into more. And when you do feel bitterness and jealousy, make sure that you take the time to bring that to the Lord and ask for guidance. Just say, Lord, I just feel awful about this. Lord, I'm just so jealous of this situation or this person. I need you to guide me and tell me what to do. And I think if Saul had done that, it might have been different, but because he did not, that's why we end up with the life of King Saul that we have looked at. And so, thank you for spending some time with me through this, and hopefully you found it not just interesting but helpful and a warning to how to be obedient to the Lord, but then to how to avoid things like jealousy and bitterness and anger as well. And so, thank you for spending time with me today. I will see you on Thursday with the Brahmin Word. Thanks.